The Cisco 3-tier architecture. Back in the 2003-2004 timeframe, I got my CCIE routing and switching certification. And if you want a certification that will make you feel like a stud, that one will do it. Because you put so much effort into study and building and labs and troubleshooting and, the real hands-on. And then you fly out to Cisco and you build the biggest, wooliest network you've ever built and make it, tap dance around all these different scenarios that they create for you. If you pass, you walk away, you're like, I am awesome. It's just like, it's one of those like top of the rock experiences. And so I come back from getting my CCIE certification. I start consulting, right? Just doing, these small jobs on the side, fixing people's networks with great success. And then I get called into this organization where they say, hey, we got your name from so-and-so. We're building a new warehouse. And they said, what do we do from a network architecture perspective? And it was funny. I still remember I'm sitting there going, okay, so you don't have a network. And they're like, no, we're, it's almost like they're enunciating, building the warehouse. There's nothing there. So what do we do? And, I'm, you're going to need some switches. Your switches is definitely a good place. And some, you'll need an internet. And I just fumbled around. And I probably walked away from, they're probably like CCIE, or like, what is that certification like? And that's the day that I realized that there's a reason Cisco has a Cisco certified design associate, design professional, design expert certification, because it's a very different world to build something that works the right way every single time. So this whole design track and this whole design mindset is very different than the configuration and troubleshooting of the CCIE world. So I say all that to lead into the fact that I'm going to show you the basics of how to build a network right now. However, know that there is, if you really are like, man, I love this architecture side of things, there is a world of work for you if you want to get into the design side. So let me just talk about how most people begin, right? Most people begin like I did with the warehouse. You need a switch, right? And this is when I don't want to just show you the Cisco 3-tier architecture, which is the quote-unquote right way to build a network, because it's overwhelming and doesn't make much sense until you see how a network grows, right? So let's just say you come up with a new business idea. Let's put a scenario to this, right? You are going to manufacture chocolate covered toothpicks for restaurants, right? So we'll call them Choco Pick. Or something like that. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna build this business, and it's just gonna be me and maybe my wife. We're running, in our house, trying to get this thing going, right? And so you start manufacturing, and you've got your one switch, and that switch goes to a router, which gives you your internet connection. That's where just about every micro-sized network begins. And before long, you're like, man, I think I've got this thing going. We're starting to get orders in, and I can't quite keep up with it. So I'm gonna bring in another person here that is going to handle all of our ordering and manufacturing stuff and all that. And your wife is like, why is there somebody in our bedroom? And don't worry about them. So you're kind of like, okay, you know what? It's getting a little weird. Let's move out of our house and move into an office space, right? So you've got your one switch, and you've got, now a few people that are plugged into that. You've got your router, your firewall that is now going okay, seems to be okay. And man, Makayo's just signed on. Man, we've got to up the ante. We've got a few. So eventually, see where I'm going with this. You max out the switch, right? Because it was just a little Best Buy. This isn't even a Cisco switch. You just went for whatever was cheapest at the Radio Shack or Fry's Electronics or whatever. And so you're like, okay, oh no, what do I do? I'm out of ports. Let's add another switch, right? So you link your two switches. That would be a nice little crossover cable between the two, and you just keep expanding and people grow, and before long, you max out that switch. What do? You link up another switch, and it's sometime right about now, you're starting to get that kind of like, that feeling in your stomach. You've got this Choco toothpick thing going pretty well. Orders are flowing through, and it either happens or you feel like it's going to happen. You're like, man, if just one of these things go down, like I lose the whole network, and orders for Choco toothpick stops. And by the way, most people don't think of this. It just happens to them. And, something goes bad, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just lost, 2 days of productivity for my team. That just cost me, 10 thousand whatever, small business, right? So they're like, I can't do that. And so they hire somebody to come in. And they go, okay, actually, let's grow this the right way. They say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of design this in layers. We're going to take a couple switches. Let's get some, rather than these little piecemeal switches that you've bought from Radio Shack, let's get some real Cisco switches. Now, can I stop for a moment and say there is a reason Cisco switches are triple, quadruple the price of a lot of the switches that you would just buy off of a retail store. They work, right? I've done some really off the wall things because I'm in a small business. They're like, "What do you mean $1,000 for a switch? I can go to such and such place." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." And I put together some hybrid networks, and it never fails. I shouldn't say never, but it will fail at some point. That switch goes down, and I'm telling you, it's when that happens that you're like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just do it right to begin with? As everybody's staring at you and they have to send employees home for the day. You get that trickle sweat thing down your back. It's just not good. So there's a reason Cisco is that price. In addition to many other things, they keep running, right? So you've got these switches, and these are considered what's known as the access layer switches. Just think of this layer as where things plug in and access the network. CCIEs spell access with one C. It's kind of like a little club thing we got going on. So this access layer is where your computers plug in, your printers plug in, your wireless access points plug in, your IP video cameras that monitor the building plug in. All of the things access plug into the network, and it moves up here to what's known as the distribution layer. Distribution. The distribution layer switch is designed to do, a lot of stuff. And that's where this nugget is a little bit awkward. I have to bring it up because we have to start talking about this model, but we haven't actually talked about a lot of the functions that switches really can do. Switches can actually do routing. Switches can do security, known as access control lists. Switches can do quality of service, prioritizing different traffic types. Because, for instance, maybe you want that video stream to be nice and smooth. Maybe you've got IP phones, a telephone system plugged into the network, and you want to prioritize that. So that's the function of this distribution layer. So we'll talk again more about the different functions, but just think for now that this is kind of the core. It ties everything together. And these are not just simple switches. Hang on, let me just bust out a little Firefox here. Go to IM.com. Go to Google Images at google.com. Let me show you the difference. Like an access layer switch for a lot of places might be like a Cisco. Let's just go with a 2900 series, right? So take a look. Kind of like a little single layer thing going on. $630 for this. Over here you've got your access ports. These are the ones that plug in. These over here are your. You can put in SFPs for fiber optic cabling, or you've got your uplink ports that go to other ones. But this kind of level of switch is what we're looking at there. Larger organizations might go for like a 3700 series, which again gets just at let's talk more about that in a second. Let's go to Cisco 4500. This is what a typical distribution switch looks like. Now, I'm not saying every business needs to have one of these. Again, you're manufacturing toothpicks. You got 10 people, and I know you're looking at these prices. These things. This is an older model, but I mean, you're looking at 5, 6, 7, 8. You continue to grow thousands. But what do you notice about this switch? Take a look at it from jet.com. It looks like, first off, what are these big beefy things? Stop it. What are these big beefy things at the top? They are power supplies. And you can see there's not one, but there's two. It's redundant. Over on the side, and I know it's kind of hard to see, these are fan trays. Not one, but two. It's redundant. We have a this thing, hang on, let me just get my little marker going here. Magic marker. This thing right in the middle is known as the supervisor engine. It's the brain of the switch that tells it how to work. What do you notice? Not one, but two supervisor engines inside of there. So when we start looking at this distribution switch, the rule of one is none, two is one. That's the mantra of the network engineer. One is none, two is none. Really applies because if this thing goes down, that's the hub of our system, and we don't want that to happen, right? And so maybe from there we would plug in that little firewall getting off to the internet. Now we're feeling pretty good. We're kind of like, okay, we keep one of these on hand, just a cold spare swap in case one goes down. We can just switch it out. But the distribution switch, the heart of our network is feeling pretty good. and the toothpick company continues to grow, and life is good, and you just signed Olive Garden, and they're like, we want chocolate toothpicks for millions of our customers, and so now you grow, and now again, the business owner gets this feeling, or I shouldn't say they get this feeling. Nobody thinks. I'm not going to go off a deep end here, but just a brief aside. As a network engineer, you are nothing. People don't think of you. Your job is to be invisible. And the fact that nothing goes down for years and years and years means you're doing your job well, even though people don't know your name, right? So that's kind of the role that we play. So people don't think about the network until it goes down, or until you become a little more visible and like, hey, this toothpick thing's going really well. But this is kind of a creepy thing, because yes, redundant power supplies, redundant supervisor engines, redundant fan trays, redundant, yes, it feels good, but it's still one device. What if? You start planning those things, because really, the larger the company grows, the more an outage costs a huge amount of money. Not just in terms of immediately lost salaries of people that can't work, but literally customers that are lost because you couldn't fulfill your toothpick order and all that kind of stuff. So you see where I'm going with this, right? Let's add a second one. Even though it's all redundant, it's still one box. So let's just add a second one and do something like this. And that's where I'm going to stop my hand drawing and take you over to the Cisco official 3-tier hierarchy, because now it'll make a little bit more sense as you take a look at this. So this will continue to grow. We've got all of our access layer where we've got everybody accessing the network and things plugging into the network. And you notice not one, but 2 connections. So this guy, if this main hub of the network, the distribution layer switch goes down, flip, it jumps right over to this, and it's not showing here, but you got your router connected to the cloud and all that kind of stuff. This is the proper way to build a network. And by the way, the smallest model Cisco has, if you start getting into their guides, and they have a lot of great design guides on their website. If this is interesting to you, just go on there and search for Cisco Safe. It's an acronym where they just have blueprints and architectures for the right way to do this. So Cisco Safe. Anyway, the smallest model that Cisco supports is this. If you're like, hey, I just want to switch, of course they're going to sell you one, but they're not going to. There's not a model for that. Just a switch. You're probably thinking D-Link and Linksys. Actually, if you're thinking Cisco, you're thinking Linksys, because that's the company they acquired. Just go buy something small from them. But if you're really ready to grow something big, give us a call. This is the smallest. 1 distribution layer, 2 access layer switches is kind of our smallest model that we support. Now I know you're looking at this picture. You're like, okay, that's cool. I got it. We've talked about this. What's the core, right? So the core is actually not necessary typically until you get multiple buildings on your campus. And when I say multiple, I mean quite a few. The biggest, most common model is known as a collapsed core, which there is no core. We kind of serve both functions in the distribution layer. But hang on, let me go back to my whiteboard. Chocolate toothpick manufacturing's gone crazy, right? You've got your original building where you've got that little 3-tier, or I should say 2-tier hierarchy, right? Distribution going like that. And it's like, man, this is taking off. This is awesome. We're going to buy the building next to us. Do we need a core model? No, we do not. We build the same kind of model, a couple distribution, got all your access layer switches, you got a lot of toothpicks flowing, so money's coming in, so you can afford this, and you cross-connect them like this, the 2 buildings between each other, so that you have that redundancy. Okay, man, we're going crazy. It's building it, all that kind of stuff. You add a 3rd building, and this grows to 100, 200, 300 employees in this building, and you use the same model, distribution, access layer. Are we building a core layer yet? Probably not. But notice my word is starting to say from no to probably not. But in order to make this all work and redundant, you got to cross-connect these guys. You got to cross-connect these guys. Okay, we're feeling good. Ooh, man, toothpicks. We just took off and Outback Steakhouse once. And it's like, okay, 2 more buildings. And what starts happening is you start replicating this model time and time again. And before long, these cross-connects become just a little woolly. This guy's connected to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Right? So that's where we need a core. Right? And this is where essentially the core, just think of it as a big old cross connect, right? Where you just pick one of those buildings, put in some big old awesome switches that are a fortune, you mortgaged your house, all that kind of stuff. And instead of cross connecting all the buildings directly, they've got their distribution, their access layer, all that kind of stuff. Bam, bam, bam. It doesn't, I know, My drawings work well because it's the middle, right? It doesn't have to be the middle building. It can be any building, but that becomes your central point of cross-connect for all the buildings to go. The core really has no function other than to get all these things connected and move traffic between them as fast as it possibly can. There it is. The Cisco 3-tier hierarchy, the right way to build a network. So I do have some parting thoughts for you. We looked at that 3-tier hierarchy in terms of switches. But as you get deeper and deeper into Cisco, you'll find out that hierarchy applies to everything. Like when they're saying, okay, well, here's the United States of America, who is also a strange elephant-looking animal. So over here, I don't know where that came from. So over here is Arizona, right? Here's California, all that kind of stuff. So as you start building your network, you'll start getting all of these different offices in the region, and they're all connected across WAN links and stuff like that. So we've gone even beyond switches. So what Cisco says is the right design is, again, the 3-tier hierarchy, but instead of switches, you've got your router. So here's all your buildings, right? Building 1, building 2, or maybe we should say Site 1, Site 2, this one's in my head. Then that connects back to the corporate office, right, where you've got redundant routers, maybe the corporate office for the West Coast region or something like that. And there's your access, your distribution. And then, as this thing grows, you've got, over here in North Carolina-ish is the mega office, and everything ties back here to the core in the routing architecture. So the 3-tier hierarchy is more of a framework, right, a state of mind, and a way of building a system rather than just having connections going at random. We could talk so much more about it, but for now, we'll call that a solid introduction. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.